We want to stop the recording.
Is now starting. So welcome everybody to the special board meeting of the Needham Housing Authority Board of Commissioners on Monday, December 2nd, 2024, 2 p.m. approximately. And this meeting is pursuant to Chapter 107 of the Acts of 22, permitting us, public bodies, to hold meetings remotely as long as the public can attend. And that authorization will go through to March 31st, 2025, and I imagine it'll get extended. So I'm going to call the roll of commissioners. Reg Foster is here.
Jim Flanagan is here.
Ed Scheidler is here.
Penny Kirk here.
Janice Bennett is here.
So we have a quorum, and we also have with us Teresa Santa Lucia. Can we do a sound check there, Teresa?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Great.
Great.
Reg, I also invited Chaya to come in, so she should be joining.
She's in the attendee list. Would you like me to promote her?
Yeah.
I just resent it, so I think she'll be jumping
I'll
on.
promote her as a panelist here. Okay, so, and maybe you can introduce her as she's sort of coming on board here. And while we're doing that, I'm just going to say for the record that adequate notice of this meeting was posted by the Secretary of the Needham Housing Authority with a public notice dated November 26, 2024. That was filed with the clerk of the town of Needham. Teresa, why don't we start with your introduction or Chaya's introduction. You says Chaya, it says you're Teresa, but you're not here. So let me change that. But if you could do the honors of an introduction to the board, that would be great.
So I'll let Chaya speak for herself, but Chaya is an associate that recently joined Klein Hornig and will be helping me with this on this project. So Chaya, maybe you want to give a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I've been working with Teresa for the past few months now, and with Reg too. And before this, I worked in legal aid, and I worked a lot with tenant organization on redevelopment matters.
Great. And we are all certainly glad you're here because it's not much fun to work with Teresa when she's in between her associates here. So welcome. Okay, everybody's got the agenda. Let me rename Chaya. Did I get your name pronounced? No, I didn't get that. Yeah, that's the right pronunciation.
Just
Wani. Yeah.
Wani, so it's an N instead of R, but that's okay. No worries.
Can't have you immortalized. He has two H's. I'm the only person I've ever known that has two H's in her first name, so it makes it very easy to auto type her email address. I've discovered here, CHH. Never gets confused with anybody else here. All right, so we have a special board meeting for about an hour, focused on the Preservation and Redevelopment Initiative, and specifically the Linden Street Phase 1 redevelopment. I think everybody would first wish to know, if they don't already, that we were able to get the signed special permit from the planning board last week, and we were able to get the order of conditions from the Conservation Commission. So that was the sort of last two pieces of important precursor stuff to do, and that enabled us to get the preliminary application in for the annual winter 2025 funding round to the state, to EOHLC, that went in a week ago Monday. So we kind of made it over that finish line. Now we've got a lot more to do. The second thing, just to note for the record, is since we last met, there is a successful citizen petition to hold a referendum on the 14th of January is the dates that's been picked to try to overturn town meeting's approval of the MBTA Communities Act articles that were approved at town meeting on October 21st. That's a big problem for us because a lot of our funding is at risk because of that. We already have $1 million of grants that we are planning to use from Housing Works from Mass Development. And we've actually received formal letters from them saying, congratulations on winning this money, these grants. But if you're not in compliance with the MBTA Communities Act, if Needham is not in compliance, then there's going to be a problem. So didn't say what they were going to do, but I think we know all of that. However, we're going to continue to chug along here. And the two things on the agenda is first our initial formal agreement with the Peabody Properties and Peabody Development Housing and Affordable Housing Development Services. And that's called an LDDA, a Land Disposition and Development Agreement. And the second one is to set up a wholly owned nonprofit organization by NHA to do various things. And I'm going to basically move into PowerPoint mode here and bring up the first presentation. The idea would be to go sort of through what's in these agreements a little bit that you had in your board packet, and then do Q&A and discussion, and that's why Teresa is here. So I'm going to skate through this fairly quickly. Does everybody see the that slide okay?
No.
You don't see anything, okay? Let's just come out of that. And one more time. I did practice this, okay, so maybe this is what we need to do first. There. How about that?
There you go.
Okay, good. So land disposition / development designation agreement. What does that mean? So part of this covers doing a 99-year ground lease of the approximately 4 acres that we will be leasing to the overall initiative in 2 phases. First 2 acres for phase 1A, and then another, approximately 2 acres for the phase 1B. And I want to emphasize that NHA continues to be the 100% owner of the land in perpetuity. And then development designation means, quote unquote, engaging HSAC Peabody Developer LLC as our development partner. And this is the agreement that binds us all together for them to do the project to create the Linden Terrace Developer LLC. And that hasn't been done yet. It can't be done until we get this agreement done, but that is where we will share 50-50 in the development here, and we'll get into more detail there. The next thing that's in this agreement is it's documenting the overall development approach. All of us are pretty familiar with that, where we're doing the first half of the building in the core, 76 units first, and then in a separate transaction that will be done later, we will be doing the phase 1B portion of the building. I'll illustrate that in a minute. And basically is committing the parties to this agreement to redevelop the property as we've agreed with the details that's in there. It also contains a whole bunch of other proposed and agreed upon terms and conditions that have been carefully reviewed. And it also commits the overall effort, but led by AHSC Peabody, to find the rest of the funding necessary. There's about $10 million of funding that we've found to date, but there's still another $45 million to go for phase 1A. The last part of it is it confirms that Peabody Properties Inc. will be the operator of the property after it's built and throughout the tax compliance period. All right. Let's see now, scroll next. Okay. So, the portion of the site we're talking about is all the Linden Street part that's in sort of orange with the 18 Linden Street buildings on it. Not the Chambers part. And we will, oops, it's got out of order. Skip forward here. So, what we're signing today and what we're going forward today in terms of trying to raise money is for the phase 1 part. And then the phase 1B part is this, approximately 2 acres of the 4 acre, or approximately 4 acres site. Chambers over here on the left is not involved at all. The principal parties to this agreement are, of course, the Needham Housing Authority, and we're ultimately going to delegate that to our nonprofit organization, but we'll go through this first. The AHSC Peabody Developer LLC, that's jointly owned by the 2 companies, Peabody and AHSC, 50-50. And it also identifies the Linden Terrace, we've come to call it, the replacement property, Linden Terrace 1A LLC, which will own the building and the leasehold improvements that are made there, and then identifies the future Linden Terrace Phase 1A Manager LLC, and this is the authority to make decisions on behalf of the owner-operator of the building. The reference parties in here are the NHA Development Corporation, which is the name we picked out for our new 501c3 nonprofit organization that will be needed for reasons we'll get into, and the Linden Terrace Developer LLC. I just referenced them. They're the developer that receives the development fee, and then of course AHSC and Peabody Properties. AHSC is providing the guarantees, which is very important. Peabody Properties, as I said before, will be managing the resulting development building for 15 years plus or minus after it opens up for business. This LDDA agreement also commits us to execute in the future a development services agreement with more detail in that. All the high-level important key terms and conditions are in the LDDA, and they will be transferred over. It basically identifies NHA as the co-developer. Now we're calling it, for technical reasons, sub-developer rather than co-developer, because we want to make sure it's clear that AHSC Peabody's in the lead here. It basically identifies the development fee split of right now, the current financials. It looks like it's going to be a total of 4.2 million, split 50-50, with almost 5 million. I see we're missing a zero there upon closing. And then we all defer 1.725 million to be paid out on 10 years after the building is built. That's a common thing to do. We can come back and ask questions about that. So NHA's share in the pro forma financials as they currently exist for the preliminary application is about 1.2 million that would be paid upon closing of the financing for building 1A. And the part that would be deferred would be 862,500. And that's the part that gets paid out over 10 years out of cash flow as the overall development gets up and running. Now, I want to emphasize here, these are the current estimates. These numbers will move around as we get more funding sources, as we get closer to submitting the final application to the winter round, should we be able to make it that far. That application isn't due until February 25th. but this sort of kind of gives an order of magnitude idea of what we're doing. That, when in fact the phase 1A building opens up for business with real tenants, then we will get 1.237 million based on the current numbers that we've got here. And again, we've got very detailed spreadsheets with the financial pro formas in it, showing the sources and uses of funds, and showing a 20-year, year by year operating budget and expenses here. Another thing that's important in the LDDA is it commits all parties to a long-term affordability restriction, and that will be recorded against the property and the development. It also requires that at least, and this is a EOHLC requirement, that 72 of the new dwelling units must have an affordability, and I'm just quoting what they say, consistent with the Chapter 121B requirements. So, basically affordable on the same basis as our current 72 studio units are, that are being, basically preserved by replacing them so they will last another 60 or 75 years into the future here. It also, importantly, to make the deal work, we know about this because we've talked about it several times, multiple times over the last years, that NHA will be going through with our seabeds and cook repositioning, our conversion to Section 8. That application is in, and that will yield, it's expected to yield 68 Faircloth units. Those are subsidy units, and that's very important to the year-to-year operating pro forma, because that's what's going to enable us to actually make it available on very moderate to very low income people into the future. I keep clicking something that gets in the way. Let me move that over here. No, that over there. Okay. So the other thing you notice in the draft document you have is it has 5 sort of key exhibits to just draw your attention to. Number 1, Exhibit A is the overall 4 acres plus or minus site description. It's like a legal description, the kind of description that you would find in a deed if you bought or sold a house and recorded that at the Registry of Deeds. The second one, B, has the proposed site plan for 1A. So it's just that right-hand half where the first 76 units are going to be built. Then Exhibit C has got several pages of detailed terms and conditions and approval rights that we originally put in the RFP last summer and have been carried forward into the proposal from HSC Peabody and now carried into this agreement. So it kind of binds our new partner to a certain number of rights that have been worked on really for a year now. We've been working on developing what those key rights are very closely with Teresa here. Another exhibit that's still in the final throes of completing, but it's this pro forma budget I've been referring to. I've got a final meeting with Betsy Collins to kind of go through a list of detailed comments and questions about that. But then we will know, again, approximately what we're committing to at this stage. Of course, this budget will evolve as the funding sources change, as interest rates change upwards or downwards, as hopefully we get to the point of identifying with EOHLC what actual funding sources will come in. The approval rights we have is, of course, that can change in material ways, but NHA has to approve that, any changes as we go along. And then finally, but certainly not lastly, but not leastly, is Exhibit F, which will have the sort of overall project schedule that we're expecting to accomplish. And of course, this is the kind of schedule it'll show what it would look like if we were able to be successful in the first round of funding, which we've just submitted the application, the pre-application for, and it would be awarded approximately in the April or May timeframe. However, there's a lot of competition for that funding, and we may not get it, not because there's anything wrong with our project, but because there are other worthy projects that are ahead of us in line that have been waiting since this time last year. But it will give us a sense of the overall time frame, and of course, that will have to be adjusted, when we actually find out when we can get the funding. This last slide, we've talked about this on and off, is a very important thing, a very important feature of being able to go forward with a project like this, which is even though we are creating a whole organizational infrastructure to take everything forward for the next 15 or 20 years, so that we can harness the benefit of the low-income housing tax credits. At the end of the tax credit compliance period, the IRS regulations and the statutes that allow for this all to happen give the housing authority, and us in this case, an opportunity to buy the entire property back, because it's no longer needed to be in the sort of tax credit compliance and harvesting infrastructure, and it allows us to buy it back. It's been represented to me and us by our Cambridge Housing Authority consultants, something like $50,000 or $100,000 today for a project that CHA financed this way 15 years ago, back in the aughts. Now, obviously, it'll probably be more than that. There's a whole formula for how much that is, but it's really an incredibly good bargain. So we actually, as the sort of landlord providing the ground lease and the developer doing this, can, in that 12 to 15 to 20 year period, we can exercise that right of first refusal on pay, and we don't know what that number is going to be, but $100,000, a couple $100,000 for basically what is a $50 million, multifamily apartment building. So, and then the other important thing to know is that who knows where the NHA is going to be in the future. Our successors are going to be having this discussion, but probably nobody on this call, except maybe Chaya. She will be a partner at, Klein Horgan, and she will, be our institutional memory here. But it may not be the right thing for the future Needham Housing Authority Board of Commissioners and management to exercise our right of first refusal. So we've agreed to give AHSC a secondary right of first refusal to, that is junior to ours. But if we don't exercise ours for some reason, then they have the same benefit to be able to sort of take over the property. We still own the land, by the way. This is just the leasehold improvements. So it's kind of like the analogy I like to use is when we got our new NHA office, we spent a bunch of money building it out and making nice rugs and offices out of it. And then if we ever leave that building and go to somewhere else, we leave behind the leasehold improvements, and the landlord takes those over. And in this case, we don't, they don't just leave it behind for nothing, but they leave it behind for a very small amount of money for us to take over. So part of this, my doing this is my audition in front of all of you to see if I got this right. And so I'm going to invite Teresa to weigh in here and call our attention to any additional kind of dimensions of this that I may have overlooked here. And I'm going to just take the screen share down so we can all look at each other, but I can put it up anytime here.
I think the only thing that I would add about the right of first refusal, which is great, and I'm really glad that Reg and Cheryl were able to negotiate that, is that it's not just about taking back the property, but it's also about potentially getting the investor to exit. So remember, the investor is going to have 99.99% of this project. They then cede over all the operational controls through legal documents to the joint venture that we're going to have with Peabody, but they still own a large percentage. You know, in year 10, their economic benefit largely is supposed to, the way the program works, is supposed to have sort of terminated, and then they're supposed to sort of leave in exit 15. However, some investors are selling their interest, or some investor to other organizations that want to actually sit in and pull cash out of the organization, out of the property. So having a right of first refusal is not just, it may be that you very much want to continue a partnership with Peabody into the future, but it'd be a good way for you to be able to potentially force the investor to leave the project. Gives you
Great.
flexibility.
So I would like to go to the board next and see if you have any comments or areas of confusion or questions or anything here for me or primarily for Teresa here. Go ahead, Ed.
In regards to the petition to overturn the planning board's or our approval of what the 3,000 plus units, rezoning units, I had a conversation with Jean McKnight, the former chair of the planning board, and she indicated to me that, well, first of all, we need to remind people that authorizing that number of units does not mean they're going to be built. And research that the planning board did indicated that typically only 25 to 30% of authorized units ever get built out. And I don't know if any effort is being undertaken at the moment to put that information out to the voting public. But I do think it's very important, considering the effect it will have on our financing, that we exercise an effort to try and get that information out. That authorizing the zoning authorization does not mean it's going to get built, and that research indicates that only 25 to 30% of authorized units ever get built. So I just like to convey Jean's wisdom to publicize that.
Thank you. Jim, you've been tracking this very closely with your partners at the Needham Housing Coalition. You want to add to anything that Ed is saying here?
Yeah, just to reaffirm, it's a great point, Ed, and we all have to help the general public understand that zoning related to the MBTA Communities Act compliance, zoning is not building. So to zone up to 3,000 plus is a necessary catchment, if you will. But as clearly pointed out, there are already 700 plus units in there, apartment units in that catchment. So those would have to be replaced, which isn't going to happen, right? And all these other barriers, which is why the likely build out is at 1,700 under the neighborhood housing plan, which is what the town meeting supported. So we just have to continually get that word out there and remind people that the other thing is, this was not about MBTA compliance. This was about building housing, to address the housing crisis that includes a 12.5% affordability component. So people, I think people who have, the opposition has tried to reframe that kind of like this is just about compliance because the state's making us do it. So why don't we just do as little as possible, instead of the true purpose was to, execute on 20 plus years of planning, right, to address the need for more apartments to address the affordability crisis. So I'll stop there, but thanks for making that point, Ed. Oh, and the one thing, the Needham Housing Coalition and partners with others are going to be putting out a lot more information in the weeks to come to make sure that people have the correct information, to your point. Thanks.
Ed or Penny, do you have any other comments or questions?
I don't.
All right, great. Let me go to you, Janice. How about yourself?
Yeah, I've been following the compliance for the MBTA, and I think there was just a few basically disgruntled people, especially the ones that are trying to get the signature to overturn it, which they did. And it kind of worries me, but not really. I think they needed 3,000 signatures some odd. But if it passed town meeting, I would think that the majority of Needham at the election will hopefully go for compliance. Otherwise, like you said earlier, it could really put a damper on all the work we've done in the past 3 years. So it concerns me. And I don't really think there's much we can do about it from the board's standpoint.
Well, I think that one of the things we can emphasize is that our funding is at risk because of this.
Yeah.
And it is important to correct this and get us in compliance as soon as possible. Otherwise, all the other reasons we might not be able to get the funding in the first year. We will have one definitive reason, which is the state has made it very clear that they're not going to be giving consideration to our full application unless and until the town of Needham is in compliance. So that referendum is very important to us for the town to be successful in the January 14th referendum. Because if not, then it's going to take another month or month and a half to schedule a special town meeting to get us back into at least minimal compliance. So that's a concern. By the way, the town council has been cautioning all members of public boards that they can't be using their bully pulpit like our board meeting today or your official NHA email. I'm the only one who really has it to advocate, to lobby, to conduct political persuasion with respect to this. So I'm trying to state this as neutrally as I possibly can about the consequences, and should not be interpreted as me trying to use my incredible position of housing authority chair to influence anybody improperly here. Any other questions on the agreement, the LDDA, Janice?
No, but like I said, there's not much we can do from the board's standpoint. And I'm glad you put it that way. So
Jim, do you have any questions or comments?
Just appreciation for, how thorough the negotiations, the discussions were between all parties to get us to this point, and will continue to be. And just the terms that are fantastic, that really speak to the years before I got involved, years of work that put us in such an enviable position of being able to participate with that much revenue and serve the NHA for years to come. So thank you.
Okay, great. Now, before we proceed to a vote, I did receive an email from Ross Donald this morning as our president of our new LTO for Linden Chambers to participate and speak. And researching, what's required is not clear to me that there's a requirement for that. But I think under the circumstances, the board is okay with that. I think we should recognize him, and not for an extensive. This is not a public hearing. This is a reporting out on negotiation of legal matters, which are confidential until we actually agree as to what they are here. So, Ross, I am going to see if we should be able to hear you, Ross. So go ahead.
Right, unmute. So it
Yep,
is.
we can hear you.
Terrible there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, all right. I'd usually want to use my own live picture instead of that old face there. But yeah, I just wanted to get some clarification now that we have an LTO. We're interested in participating, so there are rules and regulations that allow for, as I read it, participation with a special board meeting, which is we haven't been including, public comments. But I'd like to have all these matters clarified if we can. And I think the participation at special meetings at least is limited to comments on agenda items. You know, I can't ramble on a bunch of other issues, but just regarding this agenda item, I don't know why that information that was shown couldn't have been delivered to the people that are interested, the LTO, the board members, and so forth. I didn't see any secret information there. But you know, we'll work these things out. You know, hopefully we'll just sort of go along with whatever we can contribute. We're cognizant of the reading of the rules and regulation that say the purpose of the LTO is to see the benefits of working with the housing authority. So we're interested in working with the housing authority, but we need to collect information from you in order to do that. So thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Ross. Okay. So if there are no other questions, we have a board resolution in your packet. I believe we do. We do. Thought I had right here, but I don't have it right here. Of course, maybe it's over here. Oh, no, this is we don't have a resolution for this. We have a resolution for setting up the Needham NHA Development Corporation here. So we will get that shortly. So I will make a motion to approve the land disposition and development services agreement substantially in the designation agreement substantially in the form that's in your packet, and authorize it to be executed by the executive director and the chairman of the board as appropriate. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Can I suggest one small
Yes,
amendment?
please.
Clear in the language that you just said, but I just want to make sure that the board will allow in their amendment any non-material changes. So if we find typo or if we need to reorient something, that we can do that without necessarily coming back to the board.
And that's what I meant, substantially in that form, and are authorized to make any non-merit material changes. So and we have a second from Janice, I thought. So in the further discussion, I will call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Jim Flanagan votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Great, and we have that done. Great. So now we're going to move to our new nonprofit organization. I have another presentation here, and let me just do the screen share. And there, and then go into presentation mode. There, can everybody see that well?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the NHA Development Corporation, and we'll get into why it's needed next. You know, in a nutshell, it's a 501c3 organization, a non-profit organization. We've all been familiar with those. That's wholly owned and controlled by the NHA Board of Commissioners and the executive director, the management. And it has, and I've quoted in its entirety the mission statement that's in the articles of the corporation here. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read it, but I'm going to read it anyway here. And it's shown in red what are sort of the key components of it. Number one, to develop, own, operate, and maintain affordable housing and sustain quality communities for low and moderate income persons, consistent with all applicable state and federal safe harbor requirements. And that's something that Teresa can address if you have a question, and to provide related resident services within such housing facilities which are consistent with the community needs and desires. Number two, to work cooperatively with the Needham Housing Authority and to further advance its mission to create, operate, support decent, safe, and affordable housing for low and moderate income households and provide related supported programs, resources, and services to improve the quality of life for residents. That's been lifted right out of our long time mission statement, that second part. And number three, to engage in any lawful act or activity in furtherance of the foregoing, provided that such activities are not in violation or inconsistent with the corporation's status as a charitable and educational organization under Section 501c3 of the IRS code. So again, that's carefully worded and recommended by our special counsel Teresa Santalucia, to keep us out of trouble, but keep it as simple as possible. That's consistent with everything we can imagine we want to do, not only today, but this entity is likely to be involved in any future PRI ventures that we undertake, like the redevelopment of High Rock Estates or the redevelopment of Chambers Street here. So it's broad enough to cover what it'll be needed for in the future here. The next slide is we had a fair amount of discussion with Teresa. And when I say we, it was Jim Flanagan, Cheryl, and myself, and Teresa on do we set up a sort of robust nonprofit that could some housing authorities, for example, like a Framingham or Taunton Housing Authority, would actually have a whole organization and staff and so forth and so on, and maybe even accomplish things for other communities other than Taunton, or do we want to just sort of have a sort of the minimum that we can that we need to get this set up, and the minimum governance, which after discussion, it seemed like it made sense just to do that, just to make it a mirror organization where it has the minimum required number of directors, to which are NHA commissioners, and one of which is the NHA director. These are directors that are going to be designated by ourselves, have a NDC director, they have bylaws that say the housing authority can suspend or remove any director by just a vote of the majority, and that no changes can be made to the NDC bylaws that you received, again, without getting the approval of the housing authority. And we are proposing as the initial NHA directors and officers, me as president, and Jim Flanagan as treasurer, and Cheryl Gosman as clerk. There's a bunch of clerkly duties, like writing minutes and so forth, that need to happen. But, otherwise, all three individuals have equal voting powers as a director. And next slide here. I think it's fair to say, and these agreements that were sent to you, the bylaws, the conflict of interest and joint interest policy, have been sort of standard boilerplate approaches to doing this. They're used, over and over. They're, Klein and Hornig broke boilerplate that's been adapted to ourselves here. The one thing that's been tailored a little bit is the administrative services agreement. And this is an agreement that allows, since the NHA Development Corporation won't have any staff or anything else like that. It'll have bank accounts and it'll have, receive monies and so forth, but it won't have anybody working for it. If there are things that need to be done, like the list A through F you see there, that would be done by, pursuant to work orders under this agreement, done by Cheryl Gosman, our executive director, and staff, and not by some separate employees that this organization might have. So finance, accounting, bookkeeping, budgeting, and auditing, personnel and human resource administration, procurement, project management services, resident support services, and then the ubiquitous all other management services necessary and requested here. So sort of include but are not limited to here list. The next steps here are to, did I skip over one here? Yeah, I did skip over this one. This one got skipped over here. So why is it needed, the NHA Development Corporation? So it will actually be the NHA designated entity that enters into the co-development agreement, co-developer LLC with our partners. And it will be the one receiving the development fee. It also allows us to access certain funding sources that are only open to nonprofit organizations. Fortunately, most of that's taken care of because AHSC is a nonprofit organization. This organization might be the holder of some of the soft loans and notes that are needed to finance the project. But as I said, the biggie is that NDC will receive those developer fees that I noted in the last presentation, and also a 30% share of other smaller fees that will go to them. Everything except the ground lease fees that will go from the development directly to the NHA. And the advantage of this, I guess, as I've been briefed by Teresa and others, is that those monies, which could be, up to a couple $1,000,000 from the previous slides, will be in the bank accounts of the NHA Development Corporation, and we, the board, can spend it on doing other things without having it to go through audit and review by EOHLC. So, one of the things as I said before, we might do if and when we get to closing and building phase 1A and receiving the development fee of 1.2 million, is we may then recycle that into new programs for our residents. We can recycle that into getting the High Rock Estates redevelopment going. There's a lot more flexibility when you have an organization, an entity like the NHA Development Corporation that is the instrumentality of doing that sort of new work here. The other important thing, we talked about the right of first refusal at the end of the last presentation. This is actually the entity, a wholly owned, 100% owned entity by NHA that holds the right of first refusal. So if in fact that right of first refusal was exercised, is done through the NDC, the NHA Development Corporation. So what we have before is this resolution authorizing the creation of the NHA Development Corporation. There's a memo from Teresa with 3 pages of other things that need to be done to get the organization up and running, but I don't intend to go through that. But obviously, if anybody has any questions about that, we should get them today. And let me now go to questions and comments. But before I do, Teresa, is there anything I missed or overlooked or you want to emphasize here?
I'll just say that the resolution I would love for this board to take, the Housing Authority Board, is the creation of the nonprofit as well as the appointment of the 3 directors. Once the 3 directors are appointed, they meet and then they accept the bylaws, the policies, and all the various other documents. But I think it's good practice to have this board not only vote to create the entity, but to appoint the first 3 directors.
And the resolution that are in their packets are the draft resolution that you gave us. So that's what we're going to vote on here with the directors here.
Let me see which one is in your packet. I remember sending you the one that.
We sent over 2 sets of resolutions, one for the NHA board creating it, and then the second one for the nonprofit to accept the bylaws.
Okay.
Oh, I can put that up on the screen if that makes any sense here. I have to find it. It's here, there, there. Open. Resize this a little bit.
I have it open, Reg, if you want me to share.
I have it here, but yeah, I can. Why don't I just throw it up and because this is what I sent to everybody here, which is there.
That's the right one. Good.
So, so this, one resolution is to, authorize the establishment of the NDC. The second resolution is to appoint the directors. And the third resolution is to, authorize Cheryl to go through and sign and enact any documents that need to be done. And then all other actions previously taken by the directors and officers at NHA relate to any of the foregoing above are hereby ratified and approved. Did you want to approve the bylaws as well? Did I hear that a moment ago?
No, that will happen once the 3 directors are elected. So the directors of the NDC will actually bylaws. We have the incorporator blank. That can be any one of you to incorporate. Not sure which one. I would recommend putting Cheryl there since she'll be the authorized person, but.
And then let's do that. But before we get to this, are there any questions from any or comments from any of the board members here, the commissioners? Penny, Ed?
I have full confidence that this has all been handled very correctly.
Thank you.
Me too.
Jan,
I'm good.
Jim,
No, same, good.
and Cheryl, I didn't mean to overlook you last time around, but I know you've been up in the
Yeah.
weeds of all of this, but any comments or thoughts?
I did want to acknowledge Teresa and her outstanding work. Teresa, I had mentioned to Reg that I was a commissioner when we did this with High Rock. And you're just so thorough that I appreciate it so much. Not that what was done in the past wasn't a good product, but this is just outstanding, simply outstanding.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I'm good. So I think we're ready to come to a vote, and we'll just put this up here again. There. And is it okay if we waive the reading of this entire thing in its entirety here? There's a
You can
page.
just say moved as written or, as displayed.
Yeah, and there's the second page there, by the way. So Cheryl will be signing this for us here. So we'll in the fill in the blank here is going to be Cheryl Gosman here, and I will make a motion that we approve via this set of resolutions the establishment of the NHA Development Corporation. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Jim Flanagan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Jim Flanagan votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Amazing grace, is all I could say.
We're off.
And we even got the meeting done on time. That's even more amazing. So, great. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second. Okay, motion to adjourn.
There,
Second.
okay. And I will call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Jim Flanagan votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Congratulations, everybody, and have a nice afternoon.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
Rich.
Thank you. You
Thanks,
too.
Lisa. Thanks, Chaya. Bye now.